Mario Draghi is leaving the European Central Bank right where he started, trying to boost the Eurozone economy. Analysts say his action when he took office 8 years ago helped save the currency union from disaster. It was a time when some member countries were deeply in debt following the global financial crisis.
The ECB is ready to do whatever it takes to preserve the euro. And believe me, it will be enough.
Draghi followed through. The central bank bought billions of dollars worth of assets, helping stabilize markets and earning him the nickname Super Mario. But today, the legacy Draghi leaves behind isn't all that heroic. Despite his stimulus measures, his main task of ensuring price stability remains unfulfilled. The Eurozone's inflation rate last month stood at 0.8%, less than half the central bank's target and the lowest in almost 3 years. Some members of the bank's governing council were against his decision last month to restart bond purchases worth $22 billion a month to pump cash into financial markets. He's also received a lot of criticism for slashing a key interest rate, which some fear will hurt savers.
Mario
Draghi is certainly one of the most criticized people in Europe. The bottom line is, I find it relatively unfair because in the middle of the ECB, he stabilized the euro. He took over tasks from central banks, what state governments should have done themselves, like structural changes, fiscal policy in favor of the economy. Ultimately, Mario Draghi had to take on all that with the ECB. I think the bottom line is he was a great crisis manager, and his whatever it takes will surely become a legend.
Draghi is leaving the central bank more powerful than when he inherited it. But he's also handing it over to his successor, former IMF Chief Lagarde, at a difficult time. An ongoing Brexit debate and US-China trade war are dragging down economic growth in the 17 countries that share the euro. Analysts have lowered their growth forecast for the region from 2% this year to around 1%. Lagarde has said she will continue Draghi's monetary policies when she takes the reins next month. Sibel Karkus, TRT World.
Well, for more on this, Peter Vanden Houte joins us now from Brussels. He's the Chief Economist at ING Group. Welcome back to the program, Peter. Now, a lot of Mario Draghi's fans have dubbed him Super Mario quite affectionately, but how do you judge his 8 years at the helm of the European Central Bank?
Yeah, I think overall he was a very good president. Let's never forget that the man actually saved the euro. We mustn't forget his famous whatever it takes speech in London in 2012. The interesting thing here is that he actually improvised this remark because it wasn't prepared, but he clearly felt he had to do something to stabilize financial markets and to stop speculation, and it actually worked. So that's very important, and he will be remembered for that. But apart from that, we mustn't forget either that he introduced a whole new toolkit of monetary policy, like the quantitative easing for the European Central Bank, the negative interest rates, the forward guidance, the TLTROs. So all of this is quite important. And finally, also important in my view, is that he was very much in favor of this banking union, and he helped to establish it also to make, let's say, the financial markets more stable in the longer run. So for all of this, I think he's a great president.
Yes, of course, his signature policy became known as his bond buying program. He spearheaded the ECB buying some $3 trillion worth of government debt over almost 4 years, which ended last year. But we still have inflation in the Eurozone that's still sluggish. Growth is still sluggish as well. Just how successful was that program?
Yeah, if you're just looking at the figures, you might indeed conclude that it was not very successful, because Draghi was actually the only president up till now that didn't manage to reach this 2% or close to 2% inflation target. The other ones did. But in his defense, one might also say that we don't know what would have happened without this bond buying program, and the ECB itself has made some simulations, some research on that, and they come to the conclusion that inflation and growth would actually have been even lower if they had in place this QE program. So at the end of the day, yes, inflation is still way too low. Growth is weak, but we should also say that we see the same phenomenon across the world. For example, even in the US, inflation has also been much lower than anticipated. So it's a global phenomenon and not only due to the ECB.
Now, as a parting gift to his successor, Christine Lagarde, Mario Draghi restarted his bond buying program last month, albeit on a smaller scale. But how successful do you think that program will be this time round? And do you think it's needed?
Well, I think it's a bit a stain on his legacy to some extent that he leaves now the ECB with a lot of controversy and that there's some infighting, some public infighting within the governing council. So that's definitely not very positive and a bit unfortunate. And at the end of the day, I also believe that most central bank governors actually don't think that the current program will add much to growth or to inflation. But the thing was that the financial markets already anticipated so much that the ECB would do something. And to be honest, also the ECB had made it understood more or less in speeches that they were ready to act. And the thing was in September that the Governing Council had to choose between conviction and consistency. And now I know that they were not very much convinced that it would work. But not acting would probably have created a lot of market turmoil, and at the end of the day would also have been negative for the economy. So at the end of the day, they did something where they know of that it will not add very much to inflation and growth, but they just had to do it because it was already anticipated.
Okay, now there are some criticisms levelled at his successor, Christine Lagarde, the fact that she doesn't have a central banking experience. How differently do you think she'll approach the role as ECB president?
Yeah, well, I think it will be different because Mario Draghi was someone who was very much in the driving seat. He very much pushed certain measures out of conviction and also out of his experience. Now, for Christine Lagarde, of course, this is a problem because she doesn't have any experience as a central banker, and therefore she will have to rely much more on the staff on the one hand and on the governing council at large. So we know that she's more of a consensus builder, and I think perhaps she will be more or less visible as an active central ECB president than Mario Draghi. Now, this is not necessarily a disadvantage. I would say this could only be a disadvantage in very difficult circumstances. Just recall this speech of Mario Draghi in London in 2012. So then he took the initiative himself to reassure the market. That's something perhaps more difficult for Christine Lagarde to do.
Okay, Peter Vanden Houte, Chief Economist at ING Group. Thank you for your analysis, as always.